So it says Obi-Wan Kenobi movie trilogy was planned before Disney Plus. This is an exclusive
Right.
over on the direct.
And
Okay.
that's definitely confirmed from when Ewan McGregor was like, maybe there's even a trilogy. Remember that?
Yep.
In that Collider interview?
Yep. He yes, you're absolutely right, dude. That's
Yeah.
true. So check this out. Stefan Daldry and Hassan Amini were brought on to direct and write the film, respectively, before the project shifted into episodic format with the launch of Disney Plus in 2019. Joby friggin' Harold was subsequently brought on to take over as head writer, paving the way for the version director Deborah Chow, eventually brought on Disney Plus. Now the project's very first writer has opened up about how his plan for Obi-Wan Kenobi's story didn't just comprise of one theatrical feature, but three. So here's the man here, Stuart Beatty. He says in an exclusive interview with the direct's Nathan Johnson, Obi-Wan Kenobi writer Stuart Beatty talked about his role in making the Ewan McGregor starring project and how it was originally imagined as a full trilogy. Beatty was credited as a writer for episodes 1, 2, 3, and the finale of the series. But what's interesting is he didn't write anything additional, which he reveals here. Beatty revealed that he only wrote the screenplay for the original feature film that the show was based on and never collaborated with the series writers, while also mentioning Solo's box office performance as the reason the Kenobi movie never getting made. And some of the stuff he says here is so interesting.
What?
It's so interesting.
They're so
dude.
out of touch, dude. Yeah, and then Kathleen saying it bombed because we didn't have deep fake.
Right.
Like, oh my god,
dude. Some of the stuff is so fascinating. So he goes on to say,
hold on, I can't. So we didn't get a Kenobi movie trilogy because of Solo,
bro. Yeah.
What about all the other Star Wars movies that did?
Well, so
really
that's
well?
right, for sure. And that's the first part of it that's definitely irritating. But on top of that, if you kind of read between the lines here, they're saying that basically they took this movie, his movie idea, the script that he did, and made it into, he took it from 2 hours to 6 hours. And like that's why I think part of the reason that Kenobi feels so uneven, because there's great stuff in there and there's great beats, but then there's like just weird off moments, like
They're
weird side
out.
characters, like super. Yeah. So it's it's tough, but check this out. He says, right. So not at all, none. I wrote the film that they based the show on. So yeah, I spent like a year and a half working on it. And then when the decision was made not to make any more spin-off films after Solo came out, I left the project and went on to other things. Joby came on, took my scripts and turned it from 2 hours to 6. So I did not work with them at all. I just got credited for the episodes because it was all my stuff. Beatty also revealed that his original story pitch to Lucasfilm in 2016 involved convincing them of 3 stories for Obi-Wan Kenobi. The first of which ended up becoming the series' first season, and the second that looked ahead to the Jedi Master's lead up to A New Hope. And this stuff I thought was really cool. This is actually really cool. He says, so when I pitched my Obi-Wan story to Lucasfilm, I said, there's actually 3 stories here because there's 3 different evolutions that the character has to make in order to go from Obi-Wan to Ben. And the first one was the first movie, which was the show, which was surrender to the will of the Force. Transport your will, surrender your will, leave the kid alone. So then the second movie was thinking about where Kenobi ends up. And one of the most powerful and probably the most powerful moment in all of Obi-Wan's story is that moment where he sacrifices himself in A New Hope. Great moment, makes you cry. But if you stop to think about it, it's a pretty sudden thing to just kind of go from being fighting a guy to see Luke and go, I'm going to die. That to me, that required forethought. That required pre-acceptance that this was going to happen. So I'm just going to skip to what he says here because it's so cool. He says, so again, it's one of those universal things we all struggle with, to come to terms with your own mortality. So that was the second step of the evolution for me, that Obi-Wan now has to come to terms with his own mortality. Somehow, in a prophecy or Qui-Gon telling him, there's going to come a moment where you're going to have to sacrifice yourself for the good. And then Obi-Wan is like, what? No. I'm here to help. I can't. No. And get him to the point where Obi-Wan has accepted the idea that he's going to die and that he's going to die willingly at a crucial moment. And when that moment presents itself, so that when the moment comes up in A New Hope, you understand. He's recognizing he's been on this journey already and he's waiting for this moment. And that's how he's able to make it so easily to do this, sacrifice and die. So that to me was the second evolution, the second film, the second story. So for me, if I have anything to do with the second season of Obi-Wan, that's the character evolution that I would take him on. That to me is really interesting. And like I said, universal. And so he goes on to kind of say, yeah, Ewan was on board for the 3 movies. Everybody was good to go for 3 movies. And then he was devastated to find out that they weren't going to do it because of Solo. So he says it was just dying to be done. Unfortunately, it was Solo that changed the direction of the system. I like Solo personally, but it hadn't made a lot of money. It is crazy in some ways to think about how it was directed by one of the best filmmakers working today. But just because it didn't hit a certain number, they had just to rethink. And again, way above my pay grade, but it certainly crushed us. Devastated, absolutely devastated. But that's the business, highs and lows. I'm glad it got made. I'm glad the show got made. I'm proud of my story that got told. I'm glad my characters are all through it. And I'm glad I got credit for it. I wish they had been able to make my movies. And he goes on to kind of clarify that he had not actually written the script for 2 or 3 yet, But yeah, fascinating, bro. Fascinating. What are your thoughts?
I would have loved I think a movie. I mean, a show is cool and all because we get to do the watch parties and all that. But I think for the actual story itself, I think a movie would be better because with shows you're writing for TV. There's going to be these suspenseful cliffhangers that drag on each show to a cliffhanger part at the end, and then the next episode starts. And usually that cliffhanger isn't addressed until like the second half of the next episode, usually. And then there isn't really much time in that episode to really discuss anything else. And you just basically just leave on cliffhanger after cliffhanger after cliffhanger. Whereas in a movie, you'll get kind of all of that, but it'll be seamless and it'll happen all at once, ending in a monsoon of a cliffhanger at the very end, which will then tie into the next film.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to Star Wars, I think movies are, I think for cartoons, Disney Plus is just fine.
Yeah.
I think for movies, like major movies like freaking Obi-Wan Kenobi or, Skywalker Saga, I think those need to be movies. For projects that are Obi-Wan and Skywalker Saga, those need to be movies. I just think it would read better. I just think the script would be better. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, even people that like Kenobi, recognize that it should have been a film and that it would have been better as a film. And I think that's totally fair. But sort of beyond that, for me, the problem I have with the show is that it really just feels like a movie that became a show. It almost feels like they didn't spend the time or the effort to fill it in properly to make it flow like a show.
Like it got watered down a little bit or stretched out in some areas.
Exactly.
Like, I agree with that. I think there were some parts that were just kind of really unnecessary in the show. The finale was amazing.
Yeah.
It was simply everything pretty much. I liked it.
Yeah.
But the show itself, all the other episodes were just lackluster. They were diluted. They were just dragging everything on, focusing too much on Reva. I liked little Leia, but it was just too much of this just dragging stuff out.
Yeah.
I'm here for Kenobi. Get to the point. And there were things that just did not make sense. I still will never get over that Vader fire thing.
Yeah, it's so weird.
That was so ridiculous. And like how Deborah Chow directed everything so shakily, and so I'm like, I'm trying to watch the scene. Like, can you stop moving the camera, please?
Yeah, 100%.
What is this? I'm trying to focus. It's taking me out of the
crazy
scene. Yeah, it was horrible.
Yeah.
But that being said, the finale was fantastic. So
yeah, the finale hits for me in all the right places. The first half of the finale, I think, is still super rough. But I will say the ending with Reva didn't trigger me as much as I thought it would. I still think it's ridiculous, but it's honestly,
dude, I haven't even made videos about that. I'm too busy talking about the Obi-Wan and Vader fight still.
But that's and I'm interested to know your thoughts on it. But my take on the Reva ending is like it's meaningless. It's literally meaningless.
Oh, it's so forced.